Our lesson today can be found on page 410 of your textbook, and it's called Estimate Products. Our objective is to learn how to use rounding to estimate products of decimals. Let's begin with the first problem. The problem is asking, Emmeline and her family took a trip to Europe. As they drove through France, they saw a sign showing the distance to Paris to be 328 kilometers. If 1 kilometer is about 0.62 miles, estimate the distance in miles. You are then being asked to estimate 328 times 0.62. So let's see how we can estimate these factors. The very first step is to use our rounding rules. Let's look at 328. We will look at the greatest place value, which is 300. We will look at the number right next to it. If it's less than 5, we will go ahead and round down to just 300. We're going to do the same thing to 0.62. I'm going to look at the largest place value in this case, which is 6. And then I'm going to look at the number right next to it. Because it's less than 5, I am going to round down, so it's going to become 0.60 or even simpler, 0.6. So as you can see, I have simplified the problem a great deal. So 6 times 0 is now 0. 6 times 0, still 0. 6 times 3 is now 18. Remember step number 2? I need to go back to my problems and see how many spaces are there after the decimal point right here. This is a whole number. I don't see any decimal point, so I don't need to worry about it. However, down here I see the decimal point, and I see that there's 1 space after it. And that's what I'm going to have in my answer as well. I'm going to have 1 place after the decimal point. So my answer becomes then 100 about, because it is an estimate, so the word about is very important, about 180 miles. Let's try a different problem. What about if we are going to estimate 96 multiplied by, I'm going to write backwards, 709. Here's the decimal point, and here's the 2, and that's what we are multiplying. So it's 2 and 907 thousandths multiplied by 96. We want to estimate the product. So we're going to use our rounding rules. Looking at the very first factor, we're going to look at the greatest place value. Look at the number next to it. Because it is a 6, it's 5 or greater, means that the 9 must be raised. So 96 will round up to be 100. Now let's look at the next factor. The greatest place value over here is 2. Now looking at the number right next to it is a 9, which is greater than 5. So that tells me I need to round up. So it's going to become, instead of 2.907, it's going to become a 3. You could have said it would be a 3.000. But would that make any difference? No, it would not. So I'm going to go ahead and erase it. So we can do this calculation very easily. 300. Do I need to worry about any decimal points? No, I don't see any decimal points here nor here. So therefore my answer won't have any decimal points either. please note one thing. We ended up rounding up. 96 became 100, and 2.907 thousandths became 3. So the actual answer would be less than 300. Okay, so when we estimate, we're saying the answer is about 300. But we are going to keep in mind, because we ended up rounding up, that the actual product, if we were to calculate it, which we can do, is actually less than 300. Let's try one final example. What about 359? And that's going to be multiplied by 0.34. Remember, we want to estimate the product. So, looking at our rounding rules, we go to the greatest place value. The number next to it is a 5. And the rule says that if it's 5 or above, we round up. So 359 then becomes 400. Looking at the next factor, we see that 3 has the greatest place value. And we look at the number right next to it, which is a 4, which is less than 5. So in this case, we need to round down. So instead of 0.34, we're going to have 0.30, or simply 0.3. We can do this very quickly. 3 times 0 is 0. 3 times 0 is 0. 3 times 4 is 12. Whoa. Let's go ahead and write the 12 over here. Now we need to decide how many places are there after the decimal points. There aren't any over here. In this case, there is one place value, one space after the decimal point. So therefore, in my answer, I should also have one space after the decimal point. The answer therefore becomes about 120. Do I need to put a 0.0? No, I don't. Does it hurt me if I do? No, it does not. So today, you have learned how to estimate the product of decimals and whole numbers. The next time, you will learn how to find the product of two decimal factors. So stay tuned.